Oh, it's live. Yay. I always do that, like, oh, we're live. Okay, so I guess first of all, Amy, thank you so much for doing this with us. Like, I really appreciate what you're doing in your project. Would you mind introducing yourself, just in case someone watches this on YouTube later?
Sure. So my name is Amy Woodward, and I'm a professional photographer in Ferndale, Washington. So I'm not too far away from you. Do you want to know about the project? Do you want me to just launch straight into what it is?
I would love to know about the project because it's the Kintsugi Project. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
The project has been a year-long photographic project that started in January of 2017. And it was one that just really happened organically. I find that in a lot of my portrait work, because I'm a fine art nude portrait photographer as well, people will often have the conversation about scars and wanting to kind of, can we edit those out? Can we Photoshop them? And it's always been my philosophy that, you know, if it's not permanent, yes, I can Photoshop it out. But if it is permanent, that's absolutely a part of your journey. And I want to represent that in my photographic body of work. And I think that scars are a really important part of who we are as people. And in January of last year, I had seen another photographer who had featured scars in a photograph, and it was just so beautiful. And I just thought, you know, I really would love to gather as many people as I can and create a project featuring scars. And not only that, but delve further into it and have the storytelling behind these scars, because everybody has a story. Everybody has a scar story. And whether it's somebody in the grocery store, people that we work with, there's the pain pathways that happen through damage or trauma. Frequently, they leave these lasting marks. And not only are they lasting on the body, on the physical body, but also in the mental body. And I think it's really important that people understand that everybody has a story and that you're not alone. And to create a photographic project that featured the beautification of these scars, we're often inundated with messages through social media and through media in general that says that the cisnormative standard of beauty that we're presented with to try and achieve, that somehow we've reached a level of achievement when we get there, and you know, it's, you want to look like a magazine. But when we actually feature people as they really are in their raw and real way and feature their scars, it just came together so beautifully and organically. So not only are we featuring amazing people, their scars, whether they're physical or mental, the stories behind them, it's the creating of a community that people can understand that our hope is to have others see these photographs and hear these stories and somehow see a piece of themselves. So it's been a wonderful project of community. I think that's the strongest thing behind it.
I think it's beautiful. I mean, now I saw on your Kickstarter campaign that you worked with 55 people. 55. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you tell us just like maybe about one story that stood out to you? I'm sure that they all stood out, but
they do.
Just to get an idea.
Sure. So there are 55 people, and it was, I keep coming back to the word organic, but it really was literally, I put out a call on Facebook to say, do you have scars that you want to share in this photographic project? We're going to be painting your scars gold with the philosophy of Kintsugi, which is the Japanese art form where crafters would put back together a piece of shattered pottery with lacquer that contained gold or platinum in it. And it celebrates the tenacity and the life of a piece and the beauty of those scars and the strength that comes into it, right? So I literally just put out a call on Facebook and people started to respond. And I think that first session we did 16 or 18 people. And then a couple months later, there was another 15 or 18 people a couple months after that. So it just grew and grew. I flew to Utah to photograph several subjects that had expressed interest. And then we did the last session in December. And when you say, does one person stand out? Honestly, there are so many stories that are so important to share that it's tough to section one out. We have several people who have self-harm scars, and they talk about their storytelling journey from being in a place mentally that was more complicated and more difficult, and healing from that and coming to a place of peace and acceptance and growth. We have people who are dealing with the scars of childbirth and motherhood, and people who have double mastectomy, a cancer survivor. We have a couple who are married, who are burn survivors, who Joe is one of the survivors of the Station nightclub fire in 2003, I believe it was. So they just had their 15-year anniversary. So we shared his story on that anniversary. So there are several really emotional stories as a part of this project, but there are ones that don't seem as emotional, but are just as critical in exploring what scars mean to us. Survivors of critical or traumatic injury, automobile accidents, surgeries, sudden injuries, so there are, they all stand out to me. They all stand out. They're all so important, and just, it's the beauty of the human experience shared. It's from the biggest to the smallest and everything in between. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So, when you decided to do the project and you're looking at the book, the Kickstarter was for the printing of the book, right?
Correct.
Okay. So can you talk about that, or can people buy the book still, or is it just for people who...
So I had to come to a decision with the project, because once the project reached its conclusion, and I knew, because I didn't want to extend it past a year. I am also a working photographer, so this was things like I wasn't taking clients or weddings or other things while I was working on this project, because I wanted to give it 100% of my attention. So it did come to, a conclusion in December, actually December 30th of 2017. So the next step was to try and figure out how to create a publication. And there were a couple different options, and I could always go to find a literary agent and pitch a book idea to several publishing houses. But by that point, I would be a couple years out. And it seemed, when I had to question myself, how was I going to continue to try and build community with this? The clear answer was to have a Kickstarter, because I wanted the people not only who participated in the project, but for a viewer that was compelled to participate and pledge to create a book that strengthens that community, that grows that community. So it's not just the people who are in the book, but other people who believe in it as well. And that was a perfect way to do that. So I did launch the Kickstarter, and we have 2 days left. So today's March 20th, and it ends on March 22nd. We did reach 100% funding of our goal. So the minimum book order that I was going to be able to order through a professional publisher in Seattle, they have offices in Seattle and Vancouver, was Hemlock Printing. And in order to have the minimum amount of 100 books, I needed to come to a dollar amount. So that's where that $8,500 amount came from, to cover all of our taxes and fees and the publishing of 100 books, shipping, all of that stuff. So yes, to answer your question, it is for the people who participated, who wanted to pledge for their own book in order to have 345 pages of photographs and storytelling and, such compelling people. Such amazing people. I'm so proud of everybody that participated, but it was also to open those doors for people who believed in it as much as we did. So there have been a number of people who've pledged for the project and want to have their own copy of the book. Several people have pledged to receive 2 copies or multiple copies in order to give them away to people that they believe would be, want to have a copy of this publication. It's that, again, the beauty of the human experience shared. It's just finding people who believe in the project and want to spread that word. So once the Kickstarter ends, there won't be any more purchasing of the book, right? Because it needs to be done by the end of the Kickstarter. If, in fact, this grows larger than we expect it to, I can always place another larger book order through the printer and then, go from there. But right now, that's what we're looking at.
It's a gorgeous book. I'm going to try to do a screen share real quick,
okay, sure.
so that you can see that, so that people, when they watch, they can come back and look at this. You won't be able to hear the audio, I don't think. Can you hear the audio? No, I don't think so. Okay, so you know what I loved when I watched this is that there was a woman who just cried to you. You know, she
Yeah.
was so touched by the process.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can find her. Well, I won't find her, but it's just gorgeous. Like, I just love the idea of the project. I love the transformation that people had when they did it, you know.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
The experience is very cathartic for anyone that goes through it. And like I mentioned in the video that's on the Kickstarter page, it's you know, the photographs are almost secondary. It's the experience of being able to share their story. People just want to be seen. They want to be heard and be given that safe space to, you know, recognize their journey and share that journey with others. I've never experienced anything like it. And that's why it just had to happen again and again and again, because it's not just about me and the subject that I'm painting, that I'm photographing. It's about everybody else in that room, because we're photographing as a group, right? Like, there's a community in that space together. And Michelle, to hear the people talking in the staging area, to be painting one another, to have people say, oh my gosh, I can help you paint your scars. Why don't you tell me a little bit more about that? People who were complete strangers before this experience began. You have to forgive me. It's just, it was the most beautiful experience I've ever had.
Oh my gosh, I think I got my quote. I mean, really, it is so touching. I hope that you have so many, you know, people who want a second edition or a third edition or whatever and miss the Kickstarter. I mean, you've still got 2 days, so we'll help, you know, spread the word. But I'm hoping that you'll print more, just because it looks like such a cool project. Is there anything that I'm missing that you want to add? I mean, any lasting thoughts about how we should all kind of look at our scars? I mean, you kind of mentioned it earlier, but I don't know if you have any lasting thoughts that you want to mention about just living with our scars.
I thank you for asking that, you know, and I think my personal philosophy and the way that I photograph people, I'm always, you know, even my business is called Raw and Real by Amy K, because I believe in people coming to the table with their whole spirit, with what is raw, what is real, what you can connect with others. You know, it's opening up the rib cage and being so privileged to see and hear the stories that we hear, and the storytelling component that comes from photographing people in their most raw and real states. Beauty is not what we see on a TV screen. Beauty is not what we see in a magazine. I mean, that's beautiful, don't get me wrong. That there's a lot of hard work that goes into creating a very polished appearance. Real beauty comes from within the spirit, and it comes from that place that isn't on the outside. And I am so fortunate to do something for a living where I'm invited in to see true beauty every single day, scars and all. Scars and all.
You are lucky. You get to see a lot and hear and touch people, you know. It's just amazing, your work.
Thank you.
I think that's all that I have. I'm going to work on it. I'm going to go ahead and end this broadcast, by the way. And then when it ends on YouTube, then I'll put the link in so that anyone can see that. But I'm going to stop it right now.